In the thick of the night, under a blanket of stars that twinkled like scattered diamonds, a rustling broke the stillness of the farm. Venturing deep into the shadows, a group of masked thieves crept closer to their target, a lonely farmhouse nestled in the heart of sprawling fields. This wasn't just any night. It was a night that would change everything. The moon cast a pale glow, illuminating the rustic two-story home. Inside, Hank Reynolds, a weathered farmer with hands as rough as the land he tilled, was fast asleep. His dreams were filled with sunlight and hard labor images of golden wheat swaying in the breeze, a cycle of life he had nurtured for years. But out there in the darkness, a different sort of life lurked, one driven by greed and desperation. A crunch underfoot snapped Hank from his slumber. He rubbed his weary eyes, letting out a low groan. It was just the wind, he thought. But as he settled back into his dreams, the noise grew louder. The back door creaked as it swung open, its hinges protesting against the intrusion. And there they were, three masked figures, clad in black, their breath fogging in the crisp night air. They entered his sanctuary with an air of arrogance, eyes scanning the rooms for anything valuable. For these thieves, it was just another job, a quick in and out. But they were about to learn a lesson they weren't prepared for. Hank's instincts kicked in like a fire ignited by a gust of wind. With silent steps, he slipped from his bed and reached for the baseball bat he kept by the door. It had seen its fair share of action in the past: wild animals, unruly kids, but nothing like this. Heart pounding, he could already hear their muffled voices, discussing how to break into the safe. They didn't realize the storm that was brewing in the depths of his being. Gathering his courage, he peeked through the thin curtain of his bedroom window. His heart jolted as he spotted them, a flurry of dark figures moving with greedy intentions. A white-hot rage surged through him. They weren't just robbing him. They were tearing apart everything he had built, the sweat of his brow, the heart of his family. He clenched the bat tightly, that old wood feeling gritty in his palms. Suddenly, one of the thieves turned, his flashlight beam cutting through the darkness like a knife. The light flickered, revealing the trembling leaves outside, a warning sign to Hank. He swung open his bedroom door, charging through the quiet house with a purpose. The floor creaked under his weight, but he didn't care. Adrenaline surged through him, molding him into a force of nature. "Get out!" he bellowed, voice like thunder that echoed through the halls, ricocheting off the walls. The thieves froze, their faces, half hidden by masks, twisted in confusion. Panic erupted among them, and for a flickering moment they dared to reorganize, turning towards the noise. With instinct propelled by years of labor and grit, Hank moved forward, swinging the bat. The first thief fell back, crashing into a chair, the sound cutting through the night like a dog barking in the stillness. Hank shouted, determined to protect not just his belongings, but the very essence of what made him a farmer: resilience, strength, and a fierce love for his land. The remaining two thieves rallied together, emboldened by their numbers. "We can take him," one hissed, adjusting his mask, bravado cracking through his voice. But Hank wasn't backing down. He had faced storms, droughts, and losses, nothing compared to this. With a swing of his bat, he charged at the nearest thief, his heart loud against the silent backdrop, a warrior in his own right. They stumbled back, caught between fear and desperation. The weight of Hank's years out in the fields, the planting, the reaping gave him strength in every strike. Hank roared, his voice booming like the clap of thunder as he swung the bat once more, a powerful arc that made the intruders flinch. The chaos brought an electricity to the air, almost palpable, lifting him from the constraints of ordinary life. Each swing wasn't just a physical act, it was a visceral declaration of his spirit, unbroken and unyielding. But the thieves weren't ready to yield. They had come too far, and the thrill of chaos fed their courage. They rushed him, desperation giving them an edge. Hank felt the rush of adrenaline and the weight of his own resolve. He maneuvered deftly, each movement calculated. They weren't just foolish thieves. They were facing a man fighting for everything he held dear. The second thief lunged forward, trying to tackle him to the ground, but Hank sidestepped, driving the bat into the side of the intruder's knee. The smash was like a gunshot in the night, echoing the pain through the thief's body as he crumpled to the floor. Gasping for breath, the third thief hesitated now, doubt seeping into his eyes. This small crack in their facade was all Hank needed, He took a deep breath, focusing on the moment, realizing it was just him against them, and he would not back down. He barked, grounding his feet, the weight of the moment heavy on his shoulders. His bat, raised high, gleamed under the soft moonlight, threatening and powerful. He knew this moment could define everything: his home, his way of life, and ultimately his very soul. Yet the thieves had tasted their own fear now. One by one, they began reconsidering their choices. The glamour of danger faded, replaced with the stark truth of the man before them, a steadfast farmer, willing to protect what was his. As if reading each other's minds, they rushed for the door, hearts pounding, voices tinged with panic. In a desperate scramble, they bolted past Hank, pushing one another to escape the retribution they had summoned. Hank heard the thud of their footsteps pounding against the wooden porch as they dashed into the night, shadows swallowed by the darkness. Silence reclaimed the air, thick with the remnants of adrenaline. Hank stood there, bat in hand, chest heaving. The reality of what had just happened washed over him like a cold shower. He was still a farmer, a protector of his land, but now he bore the weight of this encounter, an unseen wound, and a new layer of resilience etched into his spirit. He glanced around the now disheveled living room, the signs of the struggle littered about. A chair lay on its side. A broken lamp spilled light in fractured angles across the floor. For a moment, he felt the sting of pressed uncertainty, the kind that follows chaos where emotions collide. A mixture of relief and anger simmered within him. But that resolve quickly turned back to focus. With a steady breath, Hank dropped the bat and moved through the house with quick, practical steps. He'd always been a man of the earth. He understood cycles of life and loss. It was time to reclaim his space, to sift through the remnants of the night. This farmhouse wasn't just a building. It was his legacy, crafted brick by brick, memory by memory. As the dawn crept softly into the sky, Hank began to tidy up, each motion deliberate and calm. Today was a new day, a day to restore, to mend, and to remember. The long shadows of the night were behind him now, replaced by the golden light of the sun breaking over the horizon. He stepped outside, squinting against the warm rays. The field stretched before him, sprawling and alive, a sea of green and gold. He smiled, knowing that this was where he belonged. In every seed he planted, in every harvest reaped, lay his strength. No band of masked thieves could ever take that away. This place, his home, was forged through sweat and struggles, the countless mornings spent rising with the sun, working until the stars twinkled above. There was an unbreakable bond between the earth and a farmer. The love for it ran deeper than blood, stronger than steel. And though the night had brought fear, it also revealed the fire that lay within him. A fire that would always blaze, illuminating the path forward. Today, like every day, he would rise again, determined, resilient, and ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. The land was in his blood, and he was unyielding in his resolve. No thief, masked or otherwise, could ever change that. Under the cover of night, as shadows swayed like whispers across the fields, a piercing silence enveloped the Reynolds farm. But that quiet was abruptly shattered, a shock to the system, as three masked figures slinked along the edge of the darkened property. Their movements were furtive, hurried, driven by urgency and a reckless ambition. The night was about to change, and not in the way they anticipated. "Hurry up," one of them hissed, glancing nervously over his shoulder. The masked men were convinced this would be a simple heist. A few valuables from a lonely farmhouse, easy money. Little did they know that they were stepping into more than they bargained for. Inside the farmhouse, Hank Reynolds, a grizzled farmer with a face lined by years of hard work under the sun, was drifting through dreams of harvests and rains. He had lived on this land his whole life, nurturing it through every season's rage and blessing. To him, it wasn't just soil. It was family, a legacy handed down through generations. As the thieves encroached silently, a sudden creak from the kitchen jolted Hank awake, sending a shiver through his spine. The stocky farmer rose from his bed, heart pounding. He instinctively reached for the baseball bat propped against the door, a relic of summer days spent playing with his kids. But those playful memories faded away as he felt the gravity of the situation. Someone was trying to invade his sanctuary, and he felt a surge of rising anger. This was no mere act of theft. It was an affront to everything he held dear. Creeping toward the sound, he kept his footsteps quiet, channeling decades of farm life into every calculated movement. Hank peered through a narrow crack in the doorframe just in time to see the masked thieves rifling through his belongings, tossing aside family heirlooms like trash in a dumpster. His chest tightened at the disrespect shown to the haven he had built. Hank bellowed, the roar of his voice echoing off the walls, a stark contrast to the stillness that had lingered moments before. The intruders froze, flashes of surprise crossing their faces, their gang of three suddenly feeling like sheep backed into a corner. What the one of the thieves stammered, but before he could finish, Hank charged out, bat raised like a warrior's sword, his eyes burning with fierce determination. Adrenaline coursed through him, fueling a fire ignited by years of hard work and sacrifice. Hank shouted, the strength of his command resonating through the air, but the thieves were not ready to retreat. The bravado of youth propelled them, and they snarled at this unexpected challenge. They hadn't come all this way to turn tail and run. Two of the thieves quickly regrouped, attempting to box Hank in. Hank was outnumbered but not outmatched. With a swing that reflected his years of farming, he connected with the first thief's shoulder with a resounding crack. The masked man stumbled backward, pain and confusion merging on his face. Hank growled, eyes blazing like the fields during a dry summer, full of determination to save what was his. This wasn't just about protecting his farmhouse or possessions. It was about defending his lifestyle, his pride, the heart of a man who'd poured every ounce of his being into nurturing life from the earth. The remaining thieves hesitated. Their confidence wavered under the weight of Hank's sheer will. Fear nibbled at the edges of their bravado. They hadn't expected someone so determined, so fierce to fight back. Words like courage and dignity were foreign to them. But Hank had lived them every day of his life. One of the thieves shouted, trying to rally his partner, but Hank had already launched himself toward the second thief, bat swinging like a pendulum. The confrontation was no longer a simple robbery. It had turned into a storm that demanded a reckoning. Hank struck true, sending the second thief sprawling to the ground, gasping for air as the wind rushed from his lungs. Now, there was one left, the ringleader, who seemed to falter. This was a tight-knit band willing to take risks, yet now faced with unyielding defiance, their leader's bravado evaporated. Desperation clawed at them both. Hank felt it too, but it transformed him. It catalyzed his strength rather than diminished it. Hank roared once more, and this time it was like thunder. The last thief stumbled back, eyes darting around for an escape. The realization washed over him. They had underestimated Hank and overestimated their own power. Fear can be a powerful motivator, and as the ringleader turned to flee, Hank, fueled by a reckless blend of anger and adrenaline, pursued. The thief dashed toward the back door, but with one resolute swing, Hank connected with the bat, sending a shockwave through the air. The thief collapsed to the ground, leaving only the echo of his scrambling feet behind. Breathless but unbroken, Hank paused only for a moment, surveying the chaos unfolding around him. The remnants of the struggle scattered like leaves in the wind, overturned furniture, shattered glass, the scent of worry hanging heavy in the air. The allure of danger still lingered, but there was also a sense of triumph swelling within him. With heart racing, he stepped cautiously out of the doorway, scanning the yard. But the intruders had fled into the night, the adrenaline-fueled courage that had propelled them into his life now lost in darkness. A strange calm washed over Hank. He had protected his home, a deeply rooted resolve blooming at the heart of the chaos. The quiet that came afterward felt surreal. He stood on his porch, bat still in hand, breathing in the chill of the night air. The stars above stood witness to the fierce stand he had taken. Even in that moment, he felt the remnants of fear creep back in, but he pushed through. He had to. He was a farmer, a protector of the land and all that it represented. Resilience, family, and history intertwined. As the first rays of dawn began to break over the horizon, illuminating the farm in golden light, he took in the scene. The thrill of confrontation had left him slightly shaken but resolute. He hadn't merely fought intruders, he had defended everything he loved. Hank's heart swelled with pride, a warmth settling over him as he looked out over the sprawling fields. He took a deep breath, reliving the moments when he felt like a warrior. He had stood up to danger and protected what mattered most. This wasn't just a victory, it was a reinforcement of the strength that lives within all of us, particularly those who call the land home. Yet it wouldn't be easy. Hank knew the validation came with scars, the remnants of fear still whispering in the corners of his mind. Could they come back? Would they return? But he shoved those thoughts aside. This was his land and danger could try, but it wouldn't be welcomed. Hours passed, and with each moment, Hank restored order to his home, meticulously cleaning up the remnants of the night's chaos, replacing chairs, sweeping glass, and gathering his resolve once more. Every small act was a reflection of his commitment, a meditation that grounded him further into the land he loved. While he worked, memories flooded back of his father teaching him how to till the soil, of his children laughing as they helped plant seeds in spring. Those moments were the true essence of his life. And in that quiet summer sun, they felt alive once more. Hank was grateful for the reminder that life could be precarious but worth the fight. As he stepped outside again, the sun now fully risen, he could see the field stretching out before him, serene and steady. He knew he had to get back to his routine. The land needed tending. Rich, fertile soil awaited him. The rhythm of his life beckoned daily dawns and dusks, planting and reaping, love and labor. The experience still hung over him like a storm cloud, but there was an undeniable clarity within it. That night, he transformed from a farmer into a warrior, from protector of crops to protector of legacy. He understood now that darkness could come, but so could light, a dance of shadows chronicling his life story. With renewed purpose, Hank grabbed his tools and turned to the fields. As he knelt to tend to the earth, he smiled, grounding himself in the present moment. He was a farmer, a guardian to the land, and nothing, not even the shadows of masked thieves, would change that. Every seed he planted felt like an act of defiance against fear. Every yield was a triumph over adversity. And every swing of his bat, defending his sanctuary, became a symbol of strength. A proud farmer faced the challenges head-on, unwavering. That was his legacy. That was who he was. And as the day stretched on, he buried his doubts and fears beneath the growing rows of his fields, finding power in his resilience. A farmer thriving in the face of uncertainty, with the spirits of the land and legacy beside him. The fight for his home had only just begun. The moon hung high in the night sky, casting a silver glow over the quiet fields that stretched in every direction. The air was crisp, and a gentle breeze rustled through the stalks of corn, creating a soothing symphony that only a farmer would appreciate. Yet, this tranquil evening was about to take a drastic turn. Three masked figures moved like shadows across the sprawling lawn of the Reynolds farm. They whispered hurried instructions to one another, their eyes darting like nervous cats in search of prey. In their minds, this was a straightforward job, a simple heist on a lonely farmhouse barely clinging to the edges of civilization. Little did they know they had crossed into a realm where danger lurked in ways they never imagined. Inside the farmhouse, Hank Reynolds was deep in sleep, his calloused hands resting beside him on the well-worn bedspread. After a long day of toiling under the sun, he had earned this peace. But peace is a fragile thing. A sudden creak from downstairs disturbed his slumber, sending a jolt through him like a shot of adrenaline. He blinked into the darkness, senses heightened, the fog of sleep rapidly lifting. The creaking wasn't just the house settling, it was the unmistakable sound of intruders. Hank's heart pounded as he lay still, straining to hear. The echoes of footsteps, the muffled conversation, it all confirmed his worst suspicion. This wasn't just any ordinary night. This was the night they'd try to take what he had worked his entire life for. Instinct kicked in. He slid out of bed, careful not to make a sound, and moved to the corner of his room where he kept a sturdy baseball bat. It was a relic of weekends spent playing catch with his kids, but tonight it was a weapon in defense of his home. Each heartbeat felt like a countdown as he crept toward the staircase. Peeking around the corner, he caught sight of the thieves, cloaked in their black masks, rummaging through his belongings. His chest tightened with every thought of the irreplaceable memories they were handling with such reckless disregard. Family photos, heirlooms, the legacy of his ancestors. These men didn't just threaten his possessions, they threatened his history. Hank roared, his voice booming like thunder in the stillness of the night. The three masked figures froze, caught off guard, their bravado momentarily shattered. This wasn't a scenario they had prepared for, and Hank could see the flicker of panic in their eyes. One of them stammered, pulling a flashlight from his pocket. The beam of light cut through the darkness, landing on Hank's face, stark and intense. But fear ignited a fire in him. He wasn't about to back down. With a fierce growl, he charged down the stairs, bat raised high. His years on the farm had made him strong physically, yes, but even more so mentally. Every day he faced the elements, the struggles, the uncertainty of life as a farmer. That relentless spirit surged through him now, fueling his every move. He shouted, and in that moment he wasn't just defending physical space. He was defending everything he cared about. He lunged toward the nearest thief, swinging the bat with all his might. The crack of wood against bone rang out like a gunshot, and the man crumpled under the blow, howling in agony. The other two thieves hesitated, shock and fear overtaking their initial bravado. But in the chaos of their panic, they began to recover. They lunged forward, determination shining in their eyes, yet they had underestimated Hank. This was not just a farmer defending his possessions. This was a man protecting his very soul. They tried to corner him, but Hank had the advantage of familiarity. He maneuvered through the cramped space of his living room, swinging the bat again as he struck the second thief in the gut. The man doubled over, gasping for breath, his resolve crumbling. The whirlwind of desperation ignited somewhere deep within Hank, pushing him to move forward undeterred. "Stop!" the last thief shouted, his voice now trembling. He turned to flee, eyes wide with fear as the realization of their failure hit them like a hammer. In their bravado, they had underestimated the resilience of a farmer who had sacrificed almost everything for this land, a man who had toiled for years under the sun and faced countless storms with grit and perseverance. Hank called, his voice carrying the authority of one who had nothing to lose. But the final thief was already scrambling out the door, heart racing, feet pounding against the wooden porch. Before Hank could even process it, he swung the bat one last time, a swift movement fueled by instinct. He connected hard with the doorframe, sending shards of wood flying. The thief barely escaped, sprinting away into the night with the weight of their failure heavy on their shoulders. Hank stood in the doorway, breathless and adrenaline-fueled, surveying the chaos unfolding before him. The disarray of broken furniture, scattered belongings, and the unmistakable trail of panic left behind felt like a raw wound. The quiet that followed the storm hung heavily in the air, broken only by the distant sound of retreating footsteps. As the adrenaline began to fade, Hank felt a wave of exhaustion wash over him. But within that exhaustion was a flourishing pride. He had fought back. He had defended what was rightfully his. The land he had toiled over was etched into his very identity. It wasn't just soil, it was family history, a testament to survival. But now, as the calm returned, another emotion stirred within him, a flicker of fear. What if they returned? What if this wasn't over? The questions twisted around in his mind like a relentless wind. He stepped back inside, closing the door and securing the lock. The act felt more symbolic than practical, a barrier against the chaos that had just unfolded. Hank walked through his home, heart still racing as he took in the aftermath of the struggle. Fractured items lay scattered near the fireplace, shadows of broken glass reflecting the dim light. He knelt to pick up a photo of his children, the one where they grinned with dirt on their faces after a long day in the fields. The sight pulled at his heart. "I'll protect this," he whispered softly, clutching the photo tightly. With determination coursing through him, he began to clean up, methodically restoring order to the fragments of his life. This wasn't just about fixing what was broken, it was about reclaiming his peace. As he gathered up the remnants of the struggle, he thought about the stories these walls held, each corner a testament to laughter, love, and hard work. Eventually, the sun began to rise, casting a warm glow through the windows. The gentle light bathed the farmhouse in soft hues, and Hank stepped outside, breathing in the fresh morning air. The chaos of the night felt like a distant storm cloud. Here, in the first light of day, it was time to reclaim the ground. But a shift had occurred. There was a fire in him that hadn't existed before, a deeper understanding of what he was willing to fight for. He surveyed the field stretching before him, each stalk of corn swaying gently in the morning breeze, a living tapestry he had sown. This land was his, and he would defend it fiercely, with every ounce of strength he had. Hank set about his chores, working the land with a renewed vigor he had never felt before. Each turn of the soil seemed more poignant. Every seed planted a symbol of defiance against what had threatened to invade his life. He thought of the thieves, their faces masked in darkness, but their intent as clear as day. This farm would continue to thrive, not just for him, but for his children and the generations to come. As hours turned into days, he couldn't shake the experience from his mind. The confrontation had stirred something deep within him. The question of when the thieves would return lingered like a dark secret, making him both wary and watchful. He reinforced the locks, installed motion sensor lights around the perimeter, and even enlisted his neighbors to keep an eye out. Community was one of the strongest weapons he had, and he was determined to use it. But life on the farm continued, almost as if defying the ugly intrusion that sought to sully it. With every sunrise, Hank rose early and worked hard, spending hours tilling the earth, feeding the livestock, and preserving all that he had built. The smell of fresh earth filled his senses as he churned the soil, and the sound of a rooster crowing split the morning, ringing with a symphony of life. Weeks passed, and Hank felt the thrill of resilience. Yet every now and then, an unsettling feeling crept back into his mind. Were they simply watching, waiting for the right moment to strike again? Would the fight he had won be just a temporary victory? At times, he caught himself glancing over his shoulder, poised for danger. One evening, sitting on the porch as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in strokes of orange and pink, he voiced the tension to his wife, Sarah. "I can't shake the feeling that they'll come back," he admitted, voice low but steady. Sarah reached for his hand, squeezing it reassuringly. "We're stronger than we know, Hank. We've faced worse than thieves trying to steal material things." Her words echoed in his mind long after the sun had disappeared, leaving behind a tapestry of stars. The connection to family, community, and land remained his strongest weapon. It was a strength beyond the physical, a bond woven through love and resilience. On a quiet night, Hank awoke suddenly, heart racing. An unfamiliar sound cut through the silence, a rustling noise from the direction of the barn. Instinct kicked in again, and he moved almost effortlessly, grabbing the baseball bat, memories of that fateful night flush in his mind. Each click of the floorboards felt loud, as if the house itself was holding its breath, waiting to see what would unfold. As he slipped silently out of the farmhouse, Hank crept toward the source of the noise. The barn door was slightly ajar, swaying gently with the breeze. He steadied himself, knowing this could be it, the moment he'd been preparing for. Perhaps tonight the beginning of another battle awaited. Hank flung the door open quickly, bat raised, ready to confront whatever lay inside. The sheep huddled together, spooked by something small. A raccoon innocently rummaging through a bucket. Relief washed over him, but the pounding in his heart was a reminder of the weight of fear that sometimes lingered. This was life on a farm, uncertain, raw, and unpredictable, yet full of beautiful moments interwoven with challenges. Returning to his home, Hank cast one more glance at the fields. They stood proud and unwavering, like silent sentinels guarding his dreams. And though he could never predict what the future held, he felt a renewed sense of strength seeping into his very core. For every challenge that came, he would be ready. The fight for his land was more than just physical. It was about legacy, respect, and the spirit of a man rooted deep in the soil. It was a journey of pain, growth, and ultimately, triumph, a testament to the fire that burns within all who fight for what they love. And so, each morning, as the sun rose high, Hank stepped back into the rhythm of his life, fearless and determined. The land was his, and he was, now and forever, a protector of all he cherished. The masked thieves may have tried to dismantle his world, but had awakened a warrior beneath a farmer's skin, unyielding and resolute. Day by day, season by season, he would cultivate not just crops but a profound spirit of resilience. And in doing so, he would become a beacon of strength, showing that no one could take away what was rightfully his, not ever again. It was a night like any other on the Reynolds farm. Stars glittered like diamonds against an endless black canvas, and the soft rustling of corn stalks whispered secrets to the moonlit sky. Hank Reynolds, a farmer forged through years of hard work and sweat, slept soundly, enveloped in the rhythm of the land he cherished. But this night was about to unravel in ways he never expected. Suddenly, a loud crash echoed through the silence, slicing through the calm like a jagged knife. Hank's eyes flew open, heart racing. He lay still for a moment, straining to hear over the hammering of his own pulse. Then the unmistakable sound of voices drifted through the air, low and urgent. One voice whispered harshly. Another one responded, urgency creeping into his tone. Instinct kicked in. Hank slid out of bed, his heart pounding like a drum in his chest. He tiptoed to the window, eyes narrowing as he peered into the inky blackness. There were 3 masked figures creeping toward his porch, eyes darting nervously as they scanned the surroundings. Under the banks of shadows, they looked like phantoms, drifting closer to his sanctuary of life and love. The realization hit him like a bolt of lightning. Someone was trying to rob him. Rushing quietly to grab the sturdy baseball bat he kept propped against the wall, he felt a surge of adrenaline flood his veins. The last few years had been riddled with challenges, storms, droughts, even heartbreak. But this was different. This was an attack on his very essence, something he simply would not allow. Hank crept down the hallway, each step a careful thought. The kitchen door creaked ominously as he reached for the handle, holding his breath. Peering through the crack, he squinted to gain a better view. The intruders were already inside, rummaging through his belongings, tossing aside heirlooms as if they were garbage. He shouted, voice booming like thunder through the small farmhouse. The 3 figures jerked at the sound, eyes widening in shocked disbelief. "What the?" one of them exclaimed, scrambling to regain composure. Without waiting for their response, Hank burst through the door, bat raised high like a soldier defending his fortress. The sight of him, a titan of a man, surprised them. Here was the farmer they thought they could exploit, but he looked every bit the protector, someone who had fought the elements time and again. The first masked thief barely had time to react before Hank swung the bat down, connecting squarely with his shoulder. The sound was sickening, a crack that echoed through the walls of the house. The intruder crumpled to the floor, howling in agony as a mix of shock and pain contorted his face. The other 2 thieves hesitated, their confidence shattered. They had expected an easy score, not a confrontation with a raging bull of a man. Hank glared at them, fury burning in his chest. They exchanged panicked glances, but instinct drove them forward. They lunged at him, desperation clear in their eyes. The second thief swung a fist at Hank, but he sidestepped, the years of hard labor giving him agility that belied his size. With a swift move, he swung the bat again, catching the second thief across the ribs. The man let out a strangled gasp, stumbling back, his bravado crumbling into fear. Hank knew he had them on the ropes. "Leave," he bellowed, his voice shaking the very foundations of the house. This was more than a fight. It was a declaration, a demonstration of his unwillingness to yield. The remaining thief, realizing the situation was spiraling out of control, looked desperately for an escape route. Hank could see sheer terror etched across his face, and that's when he noticed the glint of a knife in the thief's hand as he stepped forward, clearly debating whether to fight or flee. Fear surged through Hank, an unfamiliar sensation dragging down his adrenaline, but it transformed into a more potent force. He would not be intimidated. He raised the bat again, feeling its weight in his hands, grounding him in his determination. This was not just about him. It was about every farmer who had ever fought to protect his land. "Come at me," he roared, the power of his words resonating in the air between them. The thief faltered, caught between the instinct to run and the pull of pride. It was a dance of fear and bravado, but in that moment of hesitation, the ringleader seemed to make up his mind. With newfound resolve, he lunged at Hank, knife aimed. Time seemed to slow as Hank's reflexes kicked in. He sidestepped again, bringing the bat down with all the strength he could muster. The crack of wood against bone rang out once more, loud and visceral. The thief let out a pained yelp, dropping the knife as he fell to the ground, clutching his arm. Hank stood over him, chest heaving, the adrenaline fueling him like fire through his veins. Hank's voice trembled with the aftermath of exertion but was resolute, fierce as the land he worked. They had come into his world, thinking they could terrorize him, but it was they who would face the consequences tonight. The first two thieves scrambled to their feet, adrenaline now fueling their own flight response. They bolted for the door, trying to escape the wrath that had unfolded in mere moments. Hank didn't hesitate. He swung the bat one last time and the sound cracked through the air, but the impact was met only with empty space as they fled into the night. Breathless and exhilarated, Hank stood alone in the silence that followed, the house feeling both strange and familiar. All was quiet except for the faint echoes of his breathing. He glanced around, still gripping the bat, taking in the wreckage that lay before him: overturned furniture, broken glass, and the unmistakable remnants of a desperate struggle. For a moment, doubt washed over him. Had he really just fought back? That thought mingled with the fear that had gripped his heart moments earlier. The attackers were gone, but there was an unsettling realization. It was possible they could return. Hank shook off the lingering dread and stepped into the cool night air, feeling the weight of the moment start to sink in. The stars twinkled above as if congratulating him on his defiance. He had stood his ground and defended his home, yet the excitement mingled with fear of what the future might hold. Suddenly, it all felt very real and heavy. He looked around at the fields that stretched out beyond his porch, the very soil he had labored over for years. The thought of losing everything, his home, his life's work, made his stomach twist in knots. In that moment, determination reasserted itself. He would fortify his home. He wouldn't allow fear to dictate his life. Returning inside, he surveyed the chaos. The tumbling remnants of a quiet night turned tumultuous. The pictures of his family were scattered across the floor like lost memories. He bent down, gathering them up with care, feeling the weight of their significance. They represented everything he worked for, and he would be damned if he let anyone take that away. As dawn broke, the first light creeping over the horizon, Hank gathered his tools, resolve hardening. Repairs needed to be made. The sense of normalcy must be restored to the house that held countless memories. With each nail driven, each board replaced, he felt the storm of the night dissipate, replaced with a sense of purpose. But he also knew he needed help. He called his neighbors, younger farmers who understood the life's challenges and burdens. They rallied together, standing side by side as they rebuilt. Community had a way of making burdens lighter, and Hank felt a rush of gratitude for those who stood by him. Together, they fortified not just his home, but the very spirit of the land. As weeks passed, life slowly returned to normal. Days of rich sunlight and hard labor intertwined with evenings filled with laughter and love, but the memories of the attack never faded completely. There was always a lingering thought of insecurity that clouded his mind, a nagging fear that one day the thieves would return. And then, one warm evening while cleaning up after dinner with Sarah, he received an unexpected visitor, someone from the town's sheriff's department. The sheriff's face was one of concern mixed with urgency. "Hank, I need to talk to you," he said, stepping into the living room. There was a heaviness in the air, and Hank felt the tension tighten in his gut. "They've been spotted again," the sheriff continued, his tone serious. "Word is they're planning to hit another farm, yours specifically." Hank's heart raced, anger and fear intertwining violently. He exclaimed, frustration boiling over. "They're slippery," the sheriff replied, his voice steady. "But we're monitoring the situation. You need to double your security." After the sheriff left, Hank looked to Sarah, her eyes wide with concern. She asked softly. "We prepare," he said, voice firm. "They think they can scare us away, but I won't let them take our land." The next days were filled with an intensity that Hank had never felt before. He installed cameras, fitted better locks, and devised a plan to keep watch over the farmhouse. The fear was still there, but now it had morphed into motivation, a driving force compelling him to fight back in new ways. Each day spent preparing was a step toward reclaiming power over his life. As the sunset painted the sky golden one evening, Hank stood vigilant on his porch, bat still in hand, eyeing the fields. He had become a sentinel, unwavering and determined. That night, a sense of calm washed over him. He was ready, not just for potential danger, but to show that fear would not define him. Days turned into weeks and the threat loomed, but nothing came. Then one fateful night, while the moon cast eerie shadows across the land, Hank spotted movement just outside the tree line. His heart raced as he gripped the bat tightly, watching as three figures emerged from the darkness, a familiar sight that sent adrenaline surging through his blood. He took a deep breath, grounding himself. This was the moment he had prepared for. As they approached, instinct kicked in and he threw open the door, ready to face them head-on. He shouted, voice booming, echoing through the still night air. The thieves froze, their expressions quickly morphing from surprise to realization. One of them hissed, and panic flickered across their faces. They had returned, thinking they could simply execute their plan, but they were now met with a wall of defiance. Hank commanded, bat raised high. Fear coursed through the intruders as they staggered backward. They had encountered a different man than before, a man fortified by experience and determination. But just as they turned to flee, Hank surged forward with renewed vigor, echoing his own resolve. In a split second, he swung the bat and struck one of them, sending him crashing to the ground. The other two, stunned by his command and spirit, stumbled over themselves, their escape thwarted. This time, the fight was angled differently. The thieves, once cocky and bold, had turned fragile, their bravado burned away by the fire of Hank's defiance. "Get out of here," he bellowed, his voice rich with authority and strength. That night he reclaimed not just his home, but the very essence of his identity. As the moonlight illuminated the scene, the two thieves fled, panic driving them forward, leaving their fallen companion behind. Hank stood strong, bat in hand, breathing deeply, the realization washing over him like a fresh spring breeze. He had faced them again, and this time they had learned the lesson. They had entered a realm of darkness, and found themselves battling against the spirit of a man willing to do whatever it took to protect his land. In the aftermath, as the dawn light began to seep into the horizon, Hank felt a radiant clarity about him. The fight had solidified something profound, a commitment to defend not only his physical space, but the heart of who he was. As his family stirred awake, Hank greeted the day with a fierce sense of purpose. The land was still his, and he was unbroken. The warm rays of sunlight kissed the earth, illuminating his path. He was a farmer, resilient and true, forever entwined with the land beneath his feet, and no masked thieves would ever change that. The battle was not just about defending his crop, it was about defending his legacy. And that was something worth fighting for, something he would protect at all costs. In the world of uncertainty, Hank had chosen to stand strong, his story resonating through the fields, unyielding, ever present, a testament to the spirit of a man bound to defend all that he cherished. No matter what came next, he was ready to face it, with the unwavering heart of a true farmer. Under the cloak of darkness, three masked figures crept through the fields like phantoms, weaving between the black shadows cast by the towering corn stalks. They moved with a sense of urgency and bravado that only the reckless possess. The faint sound of rustling leaves whispered of their presence, but they ignored it, too hungry for their prize to heed any warning. Meanwhile, inside the modest farmhouse, Hank Reynolds, a farmer shaped by grit and countless sunrises, lay fast asleep. His days were filled with the rewards and struggles of farming, the sun on his back, the earth beneath his fingertips, the cycle of planting and harvesting that dictated his life. But tonight, everything was about to shatter. A loud crash jolted him from a deep sleep, the kind that comes only after hours of hard work. Heart pounding, Hank's instincts kicked in as he shook off the last remnants of slumber. The familiar sounds of the night, the rustle of the wind and the distant hoot of an owl, were abruptly replaced by an unsettling silence. He sat up, straining to hear a voice, low and hurried, broke through the stillness. "Quick!" Hank's blood ran cold. Panic rippled through him as the realization struck intruders were inside his home. There was no time for fear, only action mattered now. He swung his legs over the side of the bed and reached for the baseball bat he kept by the door. It was an ordinary bat, but tonight it became a symbol of fierce protection. He crept down the hall, adrenaline coursing through his veins. Every creak of the floorboards felt amplified, a stark contrast to the quiet darkness around him. Hank paused at the kitchen door, feeling the weight of the moment settle over him like a heavy cloak. Peeking through the crack, he saw them three masked thieves, rummaging through drawers, treating his home as if it were nothing but a treasure trove. His heart raced as anger surged within him. They were tearing apart everything he had built, every memory he cherished. Years of hard work, sacrifice, and love reduced to mere items on a list, a reality he refused to accept. Hank shouted, his voice breaking through the tension like a thunderclap. The intruders froze, momentarily stunned by the commanding tone that echoed through the small space. One of them replied, eyes widening as they turned toward him. Without waiting another second, Hank burst through the door, bat raised high. The element of surprise was on his side, and he lunged forward, swinging with all his might. The crack of wood against bone met the air as he struck the nearest thief, sending him sprawling to the floor, a howl of pain reverberating in the silence. The other two thieves hesitated, panic flashing across their faces as they exchanged nervous glances. This wasn't the easy score they had envisioned. Hank's fierce determination tore apart their bravado, and they realized they were up against a man who knew what he was defending. Hank bellowed, channeling the energy fueled by years of defending his family and land. Those words weren't just for his intruders, they were a promise to himself, a testament to the fire that burned within him. The remaining intruders rushed forward, desperation driving them, but Hank was quicker, sidestepping their flailing limbs with the agility born from years of laboring on the farm. He swung again, catching the second thief in the gut. He could see the fear set in. They had underestimated him, thought they could waltz into his life and take what they wanted. But he was more than a farmer, he was a protector. The last thief stood rooted in place, his bravado crumbling before Hank's powerful presence. "You don't want to do this," he said, voice shaky, but the air shifted. The tone of the moment turned electric. This was a fight for survival. Hank's voice filled the space, rich and steady. "This is my home." Driven by a primal urge to protect, Hank launched himself at the last remaining thief. He swung the bat with a force that rippled through his body, connecting once more with a crack that echoed through the house. The thief hit the floor, gasping in disbelief, surrendering to the grim reality that they had pushed too far. Breathless, Hank stood in the dim light, the weight of what had just happened settling over him like smoke from a dying fire. The chaos began to calm, thick silence enveloping the room. The three intruders, shaken and battered, scrambled to their feet, urgency propelling them as they bolted through the door, vanishing into the night like shadows. Hank lowered the bat, adrenaline still coursing through him as he tried to process what had transpired. The chaos that had erupted in his home left a path of destruction: upturned chairs, broken glass, and a profound sense of invasion. But it was also a testament to his will. He called out, rushing to check on his family. In the adjacent room, his wife Sarah emerged, her eyes wide with fear. "They tried to rob us," Hank replied, his voice ragged. Relief washed over her, contrasting sharply with the leftover adrenaline that fueled Hank's nerves. They locked eyes, a mixture of pride and concern flashing between them. They knew all too well that those thieves might not be done. A risk always lay in the shadows. As dawn broke, painting the sky with strokes of orange and pink, the couple began to assess the damage. Hank cleaned up the remnants of the chaos, each action almost meditative as he shifted through fears and uncertainties. Their home lay in shambles, but it was still theirs, untouched at its core. Weeks moved forward, and yet the memory of the attack lingered, resurfacing like a stubborn weed in the garden. Hank became methodical in his defenses. He installed motion sensor lights around the property, stocked up on tools for protection, and even joined the local neighborhood watch, determined to safeguard his family and land. Though life continued as usual, a shadow hung in the air, a heaviness born from the unpredictability of danger. The world outside felt foreign, and Hank found himself glancing around corners, always alert, always prepared for a threat that might not come, but could. Hank finally confessed one evening, sitting on the porch with Sarah as the sun dipped below the horizon. "They'll be met with more than just a bat next time," she reassured him, wrapping her arms around him. Time passed, and their world shifted back to routine. The stress of the robbery began to fade into the background, although Hank was aware of the unease that simmered just beneath the surface. They put their efforts back into the land, working the fields, planting crops that soon blossomed into vivid colors, the rhythm of farm life soothing their souls. But then one cloudy evening, Hank spotted movement outside the barn, a shadow darting between the stacks of hay. Fear jolted through him, instincts honed to a sharp point. He grabbed the baseball bat again, muscles tense and ready for action. As he approached, the blurry figure transformed. It was a raccoon, harmless enough, but its presence served as a grim reminder of his earlier encounters. Hank took a deep breath, releasing tension that had coiled tight within him. But that night, sleep eluded Hank. He lay awake, the quiet night broken only by the creaking of the farmhouse, a haunting rhythm reminding him that the battle wasn't over. He pondered about the masked thieves, and a sense of vengeance mixed with turmoil began to brew within him. That unresolved fear sparked something deeper, igniting the idea of reprisal. The tension grew as days turned into restless nights. Perhaps he needed to take matters into his own hands. He wanted to find them, make them understand the consequences of their actions, show them the strength of a man who fought for those he loved. But in that turmoil, a small seed of doubt sprouted. Was that the answer? What would it achieve? Hank wrestled with the darkness, sitting on the porch under the stars, the weight of the universe pressing down upon him. The next morning, he decided to focus on securing their safety instead. He reached out to other farmers, shared his experiences, and found he was not alone, that so many in the community faced similar threats. They rallied together, forming a united front against unpredictability and crime. The power of connection slowly built barriers stronger than any lock could provide. Weeks later, one warm evening after a long day, as Hank worked late in the fields, he noticed something unusual near the tree line. Shadows danced erratically. With trepidation pooling in his gut, he grabbed the bat yet again, instincts sharpened. Peering through the corn, he spotted them, the same masked figures from that fateful night. They were cornered in the dim light, nervously fidgeting as they attempted to gather their bearings. They looked different, though disheveled and desperate. Suddenly, one thief spotted Hank, eyes widening as he recognized the man they had crossed. Fear clouded their stance. They beckoned back, backing away slowly as Hank's presence loomed large over them. One of them croaked, uncertainty pacing their voices. Hank stepped forward, bat gripped tightly in his hand. The moment felt surreal as the weight of their fear mirrored his own feeling of vulnerability from weeks prior. No anger surged through him, only a hardened resolve to confront the situation that had haunted him for so long. He echoed, his voice steady. "You came to rob me, to compromise my safety, to threaten my family." They exchanged nervous glances, the bravado shattered, clearly recognizing the man they had mistaken for unyielding silence. Hank's wings were strong, but his heart was breathing fire. "I won't let you take what I love," he stated firmly. "You may think you're weak, but you stand before me as thieves who have learned your lesson. Safety isn't about walls, it's about hearts." The words struck like chords of a tense bowstring, the fear in their eyes unraveling, confusion painted across their features. These masked figures had anticipated aggression, not understanding, not redemption. "Run," Hank commanded, the calmness surrounding him almost palpable in the thick air. "You don't have to live like this. Change your path, leave this life behind, and don't come back." The three thieves stood transfixed, a moment of humanity breaking through that fragile mask. They clung to signs of life lurking beneath those shadows. As fear nestled deeply in their veins, it no longer felt like a chase or a battle. It felt like a human moment veering toward something larger. And as they turned to flee, Hank's voice swelled. "Take the lesson with you. Choose your battles wisely." The thieves didn't look back as they dashed into the darkness, melting away into anonymity. A sense of weight lifted from Hank's chest, relief washing over him like a warm breeze. Those fleeting moments had cracked the cold bonds of their fear, shuttling them toward potential paths of redemption. He stood there for a long while, feeling the ground beneath his feet. The night swelled with stars, twinkling softly as if aligning to bear witness to his journey. He breathed deeply, heart finally beginning to settle, acknowledging something profound had shifted. Hank turned back toward the farmhouse, where the light glowed softly from within. The chaos of that night felt far away now. In its place lay resilience, the bond to his land stronger than ever, the connection to community blossoming. And as he moved forward, he carried with him the heart of a warrior, the farmer who faced darkness not just for himself, but for the spirit of those around him. The battle was not over, but it was but a lesson in vulnerabilities and strength. The rhythm of life continued to flow. The sun would rise again, the crops would flourish, and the world would carry on, unbroken by fear. Because, in the end, the true battle is not won by fists or weapons, but through understanding and the unwavering spirit that lives within us all. Hank Reynolds had faced the masked thieves, and in doing so, revealed the true power of resilience that lies in the heart of a farmer. A story that would be told for generations, a testament to the light that still shines through the darkest of nights. In the dead of night, beneath a sky lit by stars, a distant sound broke the stillness. A faint rustle, soft yet unsettling, creeping across the Reynolds farm like a thief sneaking through shadows. Hank Reynolds, a rough-hewn farmer shaped by years of hard labor under the sun, lay in bed, his mind drifting between the realms of sleep and wakefulness. Something felt off. An instinct honed by years of tending the fields tugged at him. The sound grew louder, becoming unmistakable. Voices low, hurried whispers drifted through the open window. Hank's heart raced as he bolted upright, pulse pounding as adrenaline coursed through his veins. He hadn't spent his life cultivating this land just to let it be taken from him without a fight. A voice said, cutting through the night like a knife, "Yeah, hurry up." Another voice hissed urgently. The pieces clicked into place. Masked thieves. They were here to rob him, to strip away the fruits of his labor, all the sweat and sacrifice he had put into this farmhouse. The very thought twisted his gut. With fierce determination, he swung his legs over the side of the bed, his feet hitting the cool wooden floor. He reached for the baseball bat he kept nearby, a sturdy weapon that had seen its share of action, though never like this. Hank moved silently down the hallway, his heart thumping in his chest, each beat a reminder of what was at stake. He crept toward the kitchen, where the thieves were already inside, rifling through drawers, carelessly tossing aside family heirlooms as if they were trash. Hank's voice boomed, reverberating off the walls. The intruders froze, momentarily stunned, their bravado visibly shaken. One of them shouted, the confidence in his voice cracking. Hank stepped into the dim light, bat raised, every muscle taut and ready for what was to come. These intruders hadn't just entered a house. They had crossed into a fortress, and he was its guardian. Before they could gather their wits, he charged forward, swinging the bat with the ferocity of a man defending everything he held dear. The first thief stumbled back, the bat connecting with a sickening thud against his shoulder. He fell to the ground, howling in pain. The other two exchanged terrified glances, their confidence fading fast. One thief yelled, inching backward toward the door. "Leave now and I won't call the cops," Hank warned, eyes trained on them with the heat of a wildfire. He felt the contours of fear morphing into a primal urge to protect, to fight back. In a last-ditch effort, the pair lunged at him, fueled by panic and desperation. Hank sidestepped their grabs, dodging with the agility of a man forged by the land. Each swing of the bat echoed what he had spent years building: a life, a family, a legacy. He shouted, swinging again, this time catching the second thief in the gut. The man doubled over, gasping for breath, his mask slipping slightly to reveal a hint of uncertainty in his eyes. They hadn't expected this. They thought a sleepy farmer would be easy prey, but Hank had the fire of 1,000 storms within him. The last thief implored, desperation seeping into his voice. Hank stood over them, bat heavy in his hands, breathing heavily, an embodiment of determination. "You've crossed the wrong man tonight." With that, the two remaining thieves, now realizing how outmatched they were, scrambled for the exit. Hank swung one last time, narrowly missing as they dove out the door, fear propelling them into the night. Their silhouettes faded into the shadows, echoes of their retreat leaving the farmhouse still once more. Heart racing, Hank remained standing in the kitchen, the adrenaline beginning to ebb. He glanced around at the chaos wrought by the brief invasion. Chairs lay overturned, the remnants of a struggle scattered across the floor. Breathless and trembling, he surveyed the remnants of the skirmish. Fear mingled with pride under the pale glow of the moon shining through the window. He had defended his home, but he could feel the weight of dread settling in. Would they come back? Hank couldn't shake the thought. As dawn approached, he stepped outside, the cool morning air washing over him. The early light revealed the farm, peaceful as ever, the vibrant crops stretching toward the sun, a stark contrast to the chaos that had just unfolded. He had stood his ground, proclaiming with fierce conviction that this was his sanctuary, but now the haunting thought loomed. He knew this might not be over. Over the next few days, every sound felt amplified. The rustle of leaves, the distant call of a crow, it all sent his heart racing. Even the familiar sounds of his livestock felt foreign, ominous. Each night he lay awake, the weight of his thoughts pressing down like a storm cloud. The world outside felt small, a canvas filled with shadows and fear. Hank decided to take action. He installed motion sensor lights around the perimeter of the farmhouse and stocked up on supplies, preparing himself in every conceivable way for another potential assault. He mustered up the courage to share the story with his neighbors. Together, they formed a tight-knit community watch, bolstering their defenses against the unpredictable dangers that lurked in the dark. As the nights dragged on, Hank held firm to his resolve while apprehension lingered like a ghost. There was unity in their actions that fortified him, a sense of safety in numbers that calmed his racing heart. But one fateful evening, as he sat on his porch, sipping a cup of coffee and soaking in the warm glow of the setting sun, he noticed movement near the barn. His heart dropped. A figure darted between the bales of hay and the shadows enveloped it like a cloak. Every instinct screamed at him to grab the bat, to face whatever was lurking, but caution whispered to him instead. What if it was just an animal? Seconds felt like hours as he stood at the edge of his porch, studying the shadows darting around the barn. Lines of fear blurred with uncertainty. As it turned out, it was a raccoon rummaging through discarded grains. Hank let out a breath he didn't realize he was holding. Yet the predatory curiosity of those masked thieves clung like a heavy mist in his mind. Even as the world turned to a calm night, he struggled to shake the grip of anxiety. Days turned into weeks, and finally he felt a sense of routine settle back into his life. But the anxiety never fully left, always lurking at the edges, whispering warnings of potential danger. The fields bloomed with abundance as his crops flourished, but the shadows of doubt prowled just beyond sight. Then came the night that changed everything. Hank was jolted awake by the familiar sound rustling outside, accompanied by hushed voices. This time, he didn't hesitate. The adrenaline surged like electricity as he felt the familiar weight of the baseball bat in his hands. He slipped out of bed, heart pounding, moving quickly and silently toward the source of the noise. Peering through the curtains, he spotted them three masked figures creeping through his yard. This was it. Time to reclaim his night, time to prove that he would not be broken. Without a moment's thought, he flung open the door and charged out. He shouted, bat held high and voice steady as a mountain. The thieves turned, surprise painting their features, flickering fear overtaking any hint of bravado. One of them shouted, but Hank was already in motion. He swung with precision, connecting with the first thief in a way that echoed with righteous fury. With nerves of steel honed by countless battles with nature, Hank wasted no time. It was just him and them now, a silent dance of life and death mattering only to his cause. The second thief lunged in desperation, but Hank sidestepped, fluid as water in a stream. Hank growled, swinging the bat again, feeling the strength of his forefathers stirring within him as he took another swing. This wasn't just about the night, it was the culmination of every moment that had led to this fight. The last thief hesitated, eyes wide as panic coursed through him. "We didn't mean to get out," Hank roared, voice thick with authority. The intruder took a step back, recognizing the storm that was unleashed before him. With one last defiant swing, he smashed the bat against the porch railing, the wood splintering under the force. The sound rang through the night like a summons. The intruders stumbled back, undeniably shaken. They scrambled away, racing towards the darkness, their retreat marked by fear. As silence returned, Hank stood there, bat in hand, breathing heavily as he surveyed the aftermath. The shadows were gone, but a war raged silently within him. He felt the rush of victory, but also the heavy grip of uncertainty. Slowly, he turned back to his house, heart pounding as the reality of the moment began to sink in. The air felt thick with tension. Would they come back? Could they come back? He leaned against the porch railing, contemplating the weight of what he had just done. He had stood his ground, proven his resolve. Yet, the fight was not over. Inside, Sarah met him with concerned eyes. "Are you okay?" "They came back," he said, voice low and trembling. "I chased them off, but She took his arm, grounding him in that moment. "You defended our home, Hank, that's what matters, but we need to be smart about this." In the days that followed, Hank fortified their home even further. Neighbors banded together, their shared experiences creating a bond of survival among them. They rallied into a stronger community watch, erecting simple barriers but powerful enough to slow down any potential threats. Time passed, yet the nights remained fractured. The remnants of fear lingered like ghosts of the past, whispering worries into the night air. But Hank stood resolute, knowing that he wasn't just defending a home. He was protecting the very heart of his family. And then came the morning when the sun rose with a renewed promise. Hank stepped outside, feeling the warmth grace his skin. He looked out over the fields, his acres of crops swaying gently in a breeze, life teeming in every corner. The battle was fierce, but the rewards of the land reminded him of why he fought. Days turned into weeks, and slowly that fear faded into a dull echo. The community thrived, and life on the farm adjusted to a new rhythm, one that balanced vigilance with peace. Hank learned to appreciate the dawn, the beauty of everyday life with Sarah and their children. But he never forgot the night he faced the masked thieves, nor the lessons learned along the way. It was a reminder that strength also lay in community, and that love could ignite flames even in the darkest moments. As dusk fell, Hank looked up at the sky where stars began to twinkle back into the world. He realized that the fight wasn't just about defending his crops or his home, it was about nurturing his legacy, one rooted deeply in resilience. The cycle of life continued, and as he sowed seeds into the earth, he felt that familiar burn of determination kindling in his chest. Against all odds, he would stand tall, waiting for the next storm, ready to face whatever came while holding fast to the love that anchored him in those turbulent nights. Because this was his land, this was his fight. And he wouldn't back down, no matter the darkness that lurked in the corners. Hank Reynolds was a farmer, a protector, a man shaped by wrath and love, a guardian of all he had built. And with each sunset, he reaffirmed that nothing would ever take that away from him. A sudden crash echoed through the stillness of the night, shattering the calm that draped over the Reynolds farm like a familiar blanket. Hank Reynolds jolted awake, heart thudding like a drum in his chest, instinctively aware that something was amiss. The sounds of the night crickets chirping, the wind rustling through the cornfields, were now drowned out by a feeling of impending danger. He lay there for a moment, straining to calm his breathing, ears hunting for the origin of the noise. Just then, voices drifted through the open window, low and urgent. One of them hissed. Panic clawed at Hank's insides as the reality set in. Thieves. Someone was trying to rob his home. With purpose, he swung his legs over the side of the bed, his feet touching the cool floor. Hank had worked too hard, sacrificed too much to let anyone take what was his. He reached for the baseball bat propped against the wall, a symbol of defiance that had seen countless family games, but now would serve a much grimmer purpose. Moving quietly, he crept down the hallway, every creak of the floorboards sounding like thunder in the dead of night. He peered through the crack of the kitchen door, and his heart dropped. There they were, three masked figures rifling through drawers, tossing aside personal items, treating his belongings like simple commodities to steal. Each second they spent in his house chipped away at his sense of peace. Taking a deep breath, Hank forced his anger down. He opened the door wide and stepped inside, the bat raised high. He bellowed, voice booming like an unforgiving storm. The thieves whipped around, eyes wide with shock caught like deer in headlights. For a moment they hesitated, and in that fleeting second, Hank's resolve solidified. He wasn't just defending his possessions, he was standing up for his life's work, for the future he had built here. Before they could react, he charged forward, swinging the bat with all the power his body could muster. It connected with the first thief, sending him sprawling to the floor, a pained howl erupting from his lips. The sound echoed through the kitchen, jolting the others into action. One of them shouted, his bravado melting into panic as Hank swung again. The movement was fluid. Years of labor on the farm had made him strong, and every swing was fueled by the heart of a fighter standing up for everything he loved. The second thief lunged towards him, but Hank sidestepped, his instincts kicking in with the intensity of a well-honed reflex. The bat swung again, connecting with the intruder's side. A grunt of pain followed, but Hank's focus narrowed, adrenaline coursing through him. He shouted, channeling the strength derived from every struggle, every hardship that the land had forced upon him. The last thief stood frozen, fear evident behind his mask. He glanced at his fallen comrades, and in that moment of hesitation, Hank seized the opportunity, stepping forward menacingly. "Get out!" Hank thundered, the raw power of his voice shaking the very foundation of the house. Seeing no avenue of escape, the thief stumbled backward, losing his footing, and as the chaos intensified around him, he turned to flee. Hank was quick to react, launching himself like a bull charging a matador. He swung hard, the bat connecting with a dull thud against the wooden door frame as the last intruder ducked and dashed into the night. Panting, Hank stood alone in the kitchen, the echoes of battle still hanging in the air like smoke from a dying fire. His heart raced as he surveyed the aftermath: overturned chairs, shattered glass, and the heavy scent of fear swirling like a storm cloud. The thieves were gone, but the battle had left its mark, both on his home and within him. Sarah, his wife, rushed into the room, her eyes wide with alarm. It was Thieves. Hank's voice shook, blending a mix of triumph and disbelief. She looked around the room, scanning the wreckage. "I'm fine," he replied, although the weight of the moment settled upon him. Despite his adrenaline-filled actions, the fear clawing at his gut made it hard to breathe. Would they return? Could they come back for more? As dawn broke, painting the horizon with hues of pink and gold, Hank stepped outside, feeling the cool breeze wash over him. The field stretched out before him, serene and vibrant, yet shaded with the dark reminder of the night's events. He had stood his ground, but at what cost? The tranquility of farm life had been ripped apart, and he could feel the tendrils of fear curling into the corners of his mind. Over the next few days, Hank did what he could to regain control. He repaired the kitchen, his movements steady and methodical. Every time he picked up a tool or placed a nail, it was a small act of defiance against the chaos that had trickled into his life. But inside, unease twisted like a knot in his stomach, unknowingly taking root in his psyche. He stayed vigilant, eyes darting to every flicker in the shadows, across the fields, and even the treetops. Each rustle of leaves sent a shiver down his spine. He couldn't shake the idea that the thieves would return, that their attempt was merely the beginnings of something more sinister. One evening, as daylight faded into twilight, he sat with Sarah on the porch, watching the sun dip below the horizon. "I just can't help but feel like they might come back. We need to be ready," he confessed, vulnerability breaking through his once steady exterior. "I know, Hank, but we're strong and we'll face whatever comes our way," she reassured, squeezing his hand. But Hank couldn't silence the nagging feeling gnawing at him. He couldn't sleep. Each creak of the house turned into a reminder of the battle still raging within. Days turned into weeks, and the repetition of farm life slowly resumed. But that night, as a crescent moon hung low in the sky, Hank heard it again, the rustle that had haunted him for so long. Shooting upright, he grabbed the bat, instinct kicking in once more. This time, he moved silently toward the back of the farmhouse, dread coiling tightly within. Peeking through the window, he felt his heart stop. There in the shadows by the barn stood two figures, their hoods pulled low, stealing into the darkness. They moved with an unsettling familiarity, and instinctually, Hank's body tensed with the realization they were back. Fueled by a mix of anger and desperation, Hank flung open the door. Moonlight spilled into the night, illuminating the intruders as they turned. He shouted, brandishing the bat. They froze, eyes wide in disbelief, but this time they were ready. The first thief pulled a knife, glinting menacingly in the moonlight, while the second thief stepped forward, fists clenched, a twisted grimace on his face. The first one sneered. Hank's heart raced, but he felt a surge of defiance. This was not just a matter of protecting his home anymore. It had evolved into a battle for his identity. Hank shouted, the power of his voice echoing through the silence. With that, the confrontation ignited into a whirlwind of chaos. The thieves lunged and Hank sidestepped, swinging the bat hard at the first man. The blade came down, but he narrowly dodged, feeling the rush of air as the knife grazed his side. With fury in his veins, he swung again, but this time he connected. The bat struck the thief's arm with a sickening thud, and the man cried out in pain. But the other thief rushed forward, and in a split second, Hank found himself grappling in a dangerous dance, fighting for his life. Adrenaline coursed through him, both thrilling and terrifying. This wasn't just a fight for his home. It was for his very existence, a primal instinct rising within him, the heart of a farmer, a protector, a warrior. Hank exclaimed as he battled against the rising tide of fear and determination. He swung again, struggling against both fear and chaos, each movement scripted by sheer instinct. He wouldn't become a victim, not tonight. But then, as the chaos spun around him, a cold realization pierced through the tension. There were more figures approaching from the shadows. Panic surged within him as he spotted additional masked figures emerging, slipping out from behind trees like specters summoned by the night. Hank's heart raced, the stakes climbing higher. He was facing not just one or two thieves, this was a gang. Fear gripped him, tightening its hold as he realized the odds were now stacked against him. He shouted at the two thieves grappling with him, but instead, a wave of dread crashed over him as he looked back toward the farmhouse. Would Sarah be safe? In that moment, time slowed. The figures gathered, closing in on him. Hank's senses heightened, but he had no way of knowing how many were coming or what would happen next. He felt cornered by shadows closing in, adrenaline blending with the dread pooling in the pit of his stomach. With a fierce roar, Hank swung the bat one last time, desperation fueling his movements as the two assailants stumbled back. He turned to run towards the door, fight or flight taking over. The shadows chased behind him, leaving only the raw essence of determination blazing within him. But as he reached the door, the truth dawned: this fight was far from over. The night stretched endlessly before him, and he knew it would take more than brute strength to reclaim what was his. As the darkness closed in, the screen faded to black, leaving the world on the cusp of chaos. A single heartbeat pounding in the night, a battle for home suspended in time, waiting for the next turn.